Hi, everybody. It's Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, also professional Aquarian, here for my usual Friday political astrology video. And today, my usual collaborator, Louise Eddington, Cosmic Owl Astrology, is still on vacation, and Dabney Lawless of Lawless Astrology has agreed to look at things with me. So, welcome, Dabney.
Thank you for having me, Kathy. I appreciate you letting me be the stand-in for Louise. We're gonna have fun talking about so much going on.
So much going on. And with that, I always like to start with a wrap up of news that has happened since last week, since the last video, that plays out the astrological forecast that we've been giving. And so, just to recap, we're still having repercussions from big astrological influences earlier in the month of violent propulsive change that was around the middle of the month, paradox of I gotta actually have my glasses on to read my notes. Sorry. Paradox of mushrooming attempts to constrain authority and mushrooming attempts to expand authority kind of at the same time. And also a huge influx of or increase in ideology and subterfuge. And Dabney will point out in a minute, also disillusionment. And then we have right now, we're in a stretch of making adjustment after adjustment to ever evolving conditions. So I have put the news, I've got two typed pages this week, and I've got it broken down by category. So let's start with what's been going on in the courts. In the education front, a federal judge has indefinitely blocked the Trump administration from barring foreign nationals from entering the U.S. to study at Harvard University. And given that this is a zero-sum society, now the New York Times is reporting that the DOJ is pressuring the University of Virginia's president to resign because the university has not dismantled its DEI initiatives. So clearly, education is still at the forefront of these assaults. Let's just get SCOTUS out of the way immediately. Um, with the final day of the term, yes, please. Deep breath, everybody. SCOTUS has ruled that states may cut off Medicaid reimbursement for Planned Parenthood's non-abortion medical services. And they used the ruse of standing as the way to get around this. Now, standing is you have to have standing, you have to be in a position where you have skin in the game to be able to bring a lawsuit. So, Planned Parenthood had sued South Carolina for taking Planned Parenthood off the list of providers that could be reimbursed. No federal funds go to Planned Parenthood for abortion services, which make up a minuscule percentage. I'm going off on a tangent here, but I know you guys want to know this, that, that makes a minuscule percentage of Planned Parenthood's money flow. Most of what they do is provide very low cost healthcare services to women. I mean, over the years, I've used Planned Parenthood for regular care. So the majority reasoned that the enabling federal statute did not clearly and unambiguously authorize the right to sue as an enforcement mechanism. You will notice game playing being a through line in a lot of what's going on here. Game playing, I don't know, is that Jupiter squaring Saturn, Neptune? Could be. I don't know. We'll see. Um, here's the this one got tricky. SCOTUS partially stayed a universal injunction and a Massachusetts court had issued against the birthright citizenship executive order. And a universal injunction is like what the judge in West Texas last year or the year before did, trying to deigning to put a universal nationwide ban on the morning after pill. All right. So the court went through all kinds of gamesmanship again to say that one of two things should happen. Either the injunction should only apply to the plaintiffs in the particular case, or that the plaintiffs would need to get certified as a class action, which is what they've done already. Since that ruling came down this morning, the plaintiff in that case So pause button. The Supreme Court did not rule on birthright citizenship outright. It punted it and said, we're going to keep litigating. In the meantime, you can't enjoin this issue all the way across the country, meaning that other courts can get in the game. So the plaintiff in this Massachusetts case went to already amended its petition and has asked to be certified to get certification as a class. All right, the SCOTUS ruled that Maryland parents who have religious objections can pull their children out from public school lessons that use LGBTQ storybooks. So that's eroding the separation of church and state, a fun feature of this court. Surprisingly, SCOTUS upheld a portion of the Affordable Care Act that requires health plans to provide free preventative care, like cancer screenings, against religious objections. Small employers, the plaintiffs objected to being forced to offer medications that were intended to prevent the spread of HIV among at-risk populations. SCOTUS let that one sit. I haven't had time to read all these opinions. I can't harmonize these. It's just what the lay of the land is. Okay, still with courts. A federal court blocked eliminating union bargaining for employees at 21 federal agencies. That's a big win. A federal court refused to stay its own order requiring the administration to release National Institutes of Health funding for grants that had already been approved. So this is one of those situations where the administration tried to cut money that had already been allocated, already approved by Congress. A court had said you can't do that. Then the Department of Justice said, oh, come on, let us. And the court said, no, you can't do that. And this morning or yesterday, right after it, the National Institutes of Health director of its Office of Policy for Extramural Research Administration, which I think is basically contract administration, sent out a notice telling her people not to cut any additional grant projects, and really weird language saying to unrelease the funds. So I don't know what that means. We'll see more about that. All right, courts. That's all I'm going to say about courts today. Immigration. Lots going on with immigration. Multiple high-profile detainees have been freed in the last week, including Columbia University student Mahmoud Kali. A court ruled that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man who actually had to be flown back, who'd been sent to, I don't know, El Salvador, I'm not sure where. A court said he can be released on bail. Remember that to get him back here, the Department of Justice got charges, got him indicted in Tennessee, I think. Right. So court has said he can be released on bail. ICE now says you release him on bail, we're going to go pick him up if he leaves prison. So now his attorneys want him to stay in prison. Watch this one. All right, SCOTUS comes back into this one. SCOTUS, without a hearing, without an opinion, in a one-paragraph order, stayed an injunction that a Maryland court had issued that would have blocked fast-tracking deportation of migrants to unrelated countries with little or no warning. So a court issued an injunction in April saying you can't just send these people to countries to whom they have no association. You got to give them warning. You have to tell them, you give them time to get an attorney and to fight it. So the DOJ immediately went up to SCOTUS, got an order pausing the injunction, but in the meantime, after the injunction, when the judge decided that that the administration was in contempt and not paying attention to his orders, he issued something called an administrative order that required notice to get an attorney. And that administrative order was not appealed. It's not part of the Supreme Court order. So the judge said, my order still stands. You gotta give these people, the named plaintiffs in this case, notice of what you're doing in time to get an attorney. And by the way, do not deport them until we get this solved. So, Department of Justice did two things very quickly. It went back to SCOTUS for a clarification. No word on that yet. And then it did something extremely radical. I cannot stress how radical this is. The Department of Justice has sued every single federal district judge in the state of Maryland, the state where this federal court issued its order. And they're trying to block anybody in Maryland from giving detainees 48 hours notice so they have time to get an attorney before they're sent out of the country to a country to whom they have no relationship. I cannot stress how radical both what they're trying to do and suing every single judge. So the Department of Justice is saying every single judge now has to recuse themselves. And I've read varying things about where the judge is going to come from that rules on this. I suspect it will ultimately get nowhere, but this creates a certain stench, and it's certainly a line of talking that's going to be used for propaganda. Jupiter square Neptune. All right, a few more things. In the immigration front, the FBI has pulled several thousand officers out of assisting ICE. Don't know what that's about. ICE is about to run out of money, by the way. And ICE has decided to ignore the federal law that allows any congressperson to just show up at an ICE facility and inspect it, and is now requiring 72 hours notice. Yet another thing to be fought over. Okay, one more page, people. Strap in. There's more here. In the election interference front, Trump is now calling for a special prosecutor to investigate the 2020 election, which more than 60 courts have upheld. And there's a Substack called This Will Hold that has been detailing step by step the machinations, the technicalities of how interference occurred in 2024. And it now, in its most recent piece published, I think yesterday, takes the analysis back to 2012. This Will Hold is the name of the Substack for those of you who want to go out and read it. Okay, in the technology department, Truth Social went down after the US bombed Iran, and two different groups claimed responsibility for it. An Iranian linked hacker group said they did it, and then Anonymous claimed responsibility for it. By the way, we're coming to the end of Anonymous's deadline for when it claims it's gonna drop something big, so just watch that. And the Department of Defense and the NOAA, the Oceanic Atmosphere Administration, they've turned off data from 3 weather satellites as we're heading into hurricane season. Okay, more things. DOJ has sent staff to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to revise or eliminate some 50 gun rules and regulations by July 4th, which is an astrologically interesting deadline, as we will discuss. A Republican congressman from Ohio was run off the road by a man alleged to have intended to kill him and his family. It continues to be dangerous to be a politician. All right, Israel, Iran. Middle of the month, Israel bombs nuclear facilities in Iran, right when we had the Mars Square Uranus. The two countries exchange airstrikes. Israel hits Iranian cities. Iran's bombs get through the Iron Dome. Trump says he'll give diplomacy 2 weeks, and within 2 days, the U.S. conducts airstrikes on nuclear facilities in Iran. So Iran bombs U.S. bases in Qatar. A former Israeli Defense Force intelligence officer, told Anderson Cooper on camera that Iran's attacks were coordinated with Qatar and the Trump administration. Let that sink in. If this is true, it's colluding with the enemy. And there's a word for that. So Trump declares a ceasefire. Iran denies that it got any word about terms of a ceasefire. Then a ceasefire happens. An intelligence assessment, Jupiter square Neptune. Like, what is really going on here? Um, Intelligence assessment shows that the U.S. attacks did not destroy nuclear capabilities, but only delayed their development by maybe 4 months. This is inconvenient, so the administration cancels its intelligence briefing with Congress and announces that it intends to limit the classified information that it shares with Congress from now on. The briefing did finally take place. It took place on Thursday, um, and each party has a different view on what was said. The Pentagon has begun an investigation of the release of this intelligence assessment. Al Green introduced articles of impeachment based on the Iran attack. A vote was forced and the articles were tabled. They weren't thrown out, they weren't denied, they were just put on the shelf. We'll see if that means anything. Now, since then, Trump has offered a $30 billion deal to Iran for a civilian nuclear development plan. Yes, the country that last week we were sending bombers to, he's now offering them money. And he has called for the International Criminal Court to drop its charges against Netanyahu. We'll let this sit for a minute. One more big topic, then a couple of little things. On the issue of the budget, we're heading towards an influence on July 4th that could have a big impact on what happens financially. The Senate parliamentarian has stripped the budget bill of provisions that are not strictly related to newly funding the government. And the reason is there are two ways you can consider a budget. It can be a budget bill or it can be a reconciliation bill. The vote requirement is different. A budget bill has a much higher percentage vote that's required. A reconciliation bill you can get through with fewer votes. The reconciliation bill has to only be about budgetary matters. So the parliamentarian has stripped off topics that have nothing to do with that, such as selling public lands, some of the Medicaid provisions, barring federal courts from holding the administration in contempt, expanding private school vouchers, deregulating silencers and easily concealable guns, withholding funds already approved, such as the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau and SNAP. And so the result of this is now various members of the GOP are calling on the Senate Majority Leader to fire the Senate parliamentarian for doing her job. All right. Two more areas in the revelation of corruption department. It's become known that Stephen Miller, architect of so much of this, owns stock in Palantir, which is Peter Thiel's company that is gathering all kinds of data. And it was also revealed that a White House aide who vets staffers, he's like the head of HR in a sense, some 4,000 staffers. His name is Sergio Gore, at least that's what he's going by here. It comes out he has not submitted his official vetting paperwork, and there are massive questions about what his nationality actually is. Gore is widely believed, entertainment purposes only, to be a contraction of a Russian name. That's it
Yeah,
for this week.
yeah, Malta said he was not born there. So he was not born in Malta. So where was he born?
Where was he born? What is he really?
Well, when you were talking, first of all, I think everyone has got to be so grateful for the amount of time and effort that must take to compile all that incredibly insane amount for us to process. Remember the summer of the shark a long time ago, but I miss those days. I miss the day where we just had to worry about a shark eating our arm off or something like that. So when you were talking, it just really came to me how much this Jupiter and Cancer square Aries, the themes are all over the Supreme Court rulings. And especially that Planned Parenthood one, it's such a literal war on mothers and women and women's reproductive
Mhm.
rights, right? Like that Jupiter in Cancer is really quite literally the symbolism of protecting mothers and protecting women who care for children and reproductive rights. And Saturn in Aries is about stripping that away. And so it really feels like a war on women in a lot of ways. And so one of the like, and there were so many things like immigration and, every single thing has that Jupiter square Saturn hallmark. So the only piece of good news that I want to give everybody is that I think we only get one pass of the Jupiter square. Jupiter in Cancer will be moving past that square, within
Soon
the, yeah, with like I was
in
gonna say within
July.
like a couple weeks, I was thinking. And hopefully that some of that pressure will alleviate and Cancer and Jupiter will gain its strength to do its job, which is much more of a, feminine protection energy versus being at war. And, and Saturn often trumps Jupiter. So that was just one of the things when you were talking that I was just like, God, every single one of these Supreme Court rulings really just has that Jupiter square Saturn hallmark. It's such a bummer. It's such a bummer about the timing because it is, we feel it.
It's the last day of the term. The Supreme Court goes on hiatus until the beginning of October. They can still make emergency rulings, which they have been very apt to do, but the big blockbuster stuff has been punted into next year when that aspect will have abated. So we'll see what new thing
Yeah.
comes
And
out.
also, Jupiter in Cancer, historically, there are always like big rulings that come out about the LGBTQ community. And so to have, this newest one come out, that says that, they're banning books with LGBTQ themes in schools. So there will be a backlash, people. We will not be living in this dystopian reality forever. We're just kind of in the transition right now.
And a big part of the centrifuge kicks in July. So let me go through. We're only going to take the aspects until like the 7th of July, just after the 4th of July weekend, because big things start to change. So, as we're recording at the end of the month, there are some important aspects coming that affect messaging, communications, information, actually leading to revelation. So, we'll have a lot of talk about this Jupiter, Saturn, or the Saturn, Neptune stuff that's been going on. Mercury is going to be in an easy flow, a trine with Saturn and Neptune, and then it opposes Pluto. Mercury moves into Leo, which is not going to sit quiet and it's very outgoing, high energy, people really connecting with each other, speaking up, saying things. And when Mercury does that, it's going to trine, it's going to fire up the Saturn Neptune stuff. You might find your own guidance to speak up and go do things, getting really ignited at that point. And then Mercury moves through the same territory that was really active right before the election and on the day that the election was certified. So it's going to oppose Pluto, possibly bringing things to light, not yet able to do anything about it, maybe, having to do with technology, oligarchs, power plays, corruption, big money. That that gets us into July, and then over the 4th, a bunch of really big things happen. The planet that rules how we get along, how we interact with each other, what we value, money, Venus meets with Uranus very explosive, enlightening, awakening, liberating. Anything could happen at the very end of Taurus, and then Venus immediately moves into Gemini, which is, it's multitasking, it's many things, it's supposed to be pals, many, many, many options. And as soon as Venus gets out of that, she has a conversation with Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And when previous times that, and I'll say this also for what happens with Mercury, previous times that a planet has changed signs and made a cooperative link to that Saturn Neptune, we've had really inspirational figures arise and speak. And so with Venus doing that, there could be a woman coming to the fore, maybe multiple women, because Gemini is many, it's more than one. And then, right when that is going on the 7th, Uranus, this cosmic agent of unpredictable change, moves also into the sign of Gemini. Many things are possible. And when that happens, Venus flows directly into the other money planet, the other planet of desire, Pluto. So all kinds of sudden disclosures could be made, things coming out about money, things coming out about women, things coming out about sex crimes. I don't know. Not a quiet fourth. Not a quiet fourth at all, or week immediately afterwards. And it's opening the door to contact between all of the outer planets are going to be in linked together at the very earliest parts of their signs, setting up a completely different way for how we're doing things. We have not lived through this combination of energy in our lifetimes, and I don't believe ever quite like this. Dabney, what do you see happening in the next week and a half?
Well, so one of the things, kind of riffing off what you were just talking about, the big ugly bill, is there's a big pressure to get that passed by July 4th. And as much as the news media would have us believe there are tons of obstacles and it'll never happen, I would not be so sure of that. All evidence points to the fact that every single time their backs are up against the wall, they cave into whatever he wants. So I think that we need to be prepared for some version of the big ugly bill being passed at that time. And that speaks to that Venus Uranus conjunction at 29 degrees. So anytime you have and that's the interesting thing, right? Like, not only are we living through all of these new transitions into, like, outer planet transitions into new signs, but as you do that, you have to also live through the 29th degree of the previous sign. And so the 29th degree is this really potent time because it's the very end when it's like kind of I think, if you have kids, right? When I would drop off my son to school, he would cry a blue streak in preschool and like hang on to me. And like, it was this big drama. It was this big scene, something, and then once I leave, once I'm in the car, I've driven away, the preschooler teacher would text me and be like, oh, he's fine now. Right. So it's kind of like that scene, like it's like the just like, no, I don't want to leave. I don't want you to leave me. So there's kind of this holding on, which oftentimes creates a rigidity, especially with Uranus, because Uranus wants to like move forward. Uranus is explosive. It's ready for change. And Taurus especially does not want to move forward. Taurus is like holding on for dear life. Taurus is like the kid holding your ankles, right? And, you're heartbreaking. So this Venus in Uranus, 29 degrees, money, like you said, something a big, unexpected change in our finances, and it's going to impact people. The United States chart has Uranus in the 6th house, the people. So there is something coming that it's like, this is the old. It's like what we are, going to shed before we get into that Uranus and Gemini. And like, strangely, they really have it timed. Like, I need that to pass before Uranus moves into Gemini. So, That is what I'm looking for because in a way, if it doesn't pass by the 4th of July, if it doesn't pass before Uranus moves into Gemini, there's a shot. But
Hmm.
if they get it over the finish line, that's part of this crumbling that we need to deal with. And the Uranus and Gemini is part of building it all back.
And with many, many different options, some of which may not even exist in our thinking just yet.
Right, right.
Right.
And so, I mean, when I heard all of these SCOTUS decisions today, like I got, I emailed Kathy and I was like, oh, it's just been 2 days of like disheartening rulings for the most part. There's maybe some silver linings, but they're kind of like little bones they're throwing. And it just kind of reaffirms my thinking that things just sometimes need to fall apart and people need to be impacted and feel the impacts before there is the momentum to do something better and kind of clear out this toxic waste that we're dealing with.
There's also something incredibly awakening about this.
Oh
And
yeah.
we'll look at we'll look at that at the actual 4th of July chart, and I don't think people are going to just sit and go, oh, well. I mean, I think this
No.
is going to be part of stick a dynamite up people's backsides.
Right. And with Uranus moving into Gemini, that was the revolution back in the day. So, no king's protests. There are no accidents, right? Like we're reliving history just in a different way.
Yeehaw.
What a time to be alive.
Oh, God, yes. Okay. Um, Apropos nothing, I was at a show on Broadway, uh, a rethinking of Pirates of Penzance, which is kind of funny actually, set in New Orleans, and the final song, the Pirate King is taking issue with something and says, "Go back to where you came from," and the Major General stops him and says, "We're all from someplace else," and elaborates on that, and the audience just went. I almost started crying. Oh God. Okay. Uh,
Well, I will also say that Jupiter square Neptune with the big, beautiful, big, ugly bill is, I do believe, going to be very disillusioning for people as well. So
right. Like, but I didn't think
that's
you were going
not
to
what
do
I
this to
voted
me.
for.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, like
Right.
I didn't vote for tax cuts for the wealthy. I thought we were going to bring the deficit down. I thought, oh, well, I didn't think that he was going to touch my Medicaid.
Senior citizens in wheelchairs getting zip tied in the Capitol Rotunda for protesting cuts to Medicare. That's where we are. So we will come back to this in a minute. I put my slides together in a slightly different order, but we had a startling development in New York City this week. The establishment candidate for the Democratic Party nomination, who's very controversial. He was kind of like America's governor during COVID, but he also had big sexual harassment problems, among other things. Um, got routed by a young guy. So let's start by looking at his
Maybe
chart.
Jupiter square Cancer won that round.
Yeah, here we go. So Zoran Mamdani, I'll get his name right. Um, couple of things jumped out at me immediately about his chart. Well, first off, he is a naturalized citizen, okay? And he's Muslim, and he thinks that Israel should be called to task. So many people consider him anti-Semitic, uh, a, a Jewish candidate, the controller of the city of New York, who had been arrested for resisting ICE, backed him. So I don't know. So he's got his own level of controversy. Okay. And in addition to being incredibly progressive, he believes in things like free public transportation and coming up with more affordable housing. Oh, wow. So, he's being called a communist, right? Or worse, if there is such a worse thing. Um, so what I immediately noticed was he's got this real bent for making things better with Venus and Jupiter in Virgo in the second house. One of his abilities, one of his talents is able to look at things and discern how they could be done differently. And that is in a sextile or a cooperative aspect. It's a window or a door with how he communicates, how he thinks, and how he uses his his will, how he makes things. So this would also, all that Scorpio would also make him very, very investigative. He would go deep. He would, and he could possibly do things behind the scenes with all of this. That's the first thing I want to say. What do you see, Dabney?
So I love what you circled, the Jupiter Venus conjunction in Virgo in the second house. So that is actually quite about serving the people when it comes to finances and his values. He is empowered there. I do think that all that Scorpio in the third house makes him a truth speaker. So I think that that's also something that people are really gravitating toward. So it's interesting. Scorpio is this interesting sign because it's actually quite secretive. It can kind of hold its cards close to the chest or vest. And at the end of the day, there is this kind of high level of integrity where it's like Scorpio does want the truth. It seeks out the truth at all costs. And even if that means talking about hard truths, like he was criticized in a lot of ways for saying things that other people don't want to hear. Right. Even so those two things together, his more altruistic nature to want to help people, especially when it comes to finances, but then also this truth speaking. As an evolutionary astrologer, I can't help but see that he has his South Node in Cancer in the 12th and his North Node in Capricorn in the 6th. So the 6th house is about service to other people. The 12th house tends to be someone who, either came from monastic lifestyle or very spiritual place. In Cancer, it can be somebody who was very much a caretaker, but it also could be somebody who suffered greatly. That somebody that was an outsider to society and was, cast away. And so as Cancer is the mother. So there's kind of this, he's coming from a position of really understanding compassion and empathy. Like that is something he's rooted in. And what he's going toward is bringing that compassion and empathy into a 6th house Capricorn conjunct Neptune. So there's kind of a lot of echoes there. So, but 6th house being service to the world, like to people. It's kind of like he's got to come off the mountain. He's got to come back into reality, and Capricorn, be responsible. So take those gifts from that more spiritual perspective or that more empathetic, caring perspective. And he's going to have to find a way to make that very tangible that he can actually help people. And he's going to rise in the ranks by doing that. And the other thing that stood out to me is the Aquarian energy in his 7th house. So right now, with Pluto and Aquarius, we're going to see very strong Aquarian signatures in the charts of leaders that are going to emerge as people that are going to make a difference at this time. Very powerful leaders with strong Aquarian energy. So he's got this Aquarius in the 7th house of partnership. So he can make kind of unexpected partnerships where you might be like, okay, here's this Muslim dude, but he's backed by this, big money Jewish people, right? Like, so there's kind of this unexpected alliances that I think that he is going to be making and that I think is going to be highly beneficial for him. But he is going to attract a lot of projection as well with that Neptune in the sixth house. There's a lot of projection onto him. Uranus there too. So yeah, what do you think about that, Kathy?
Well, I think that's another expression of what you were saying about the Aquarian influence, because Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, and it is in a trine, it's in a pretty close flow with his Venus and his Jupiter. So he thinks of different ways of doing things, and he's probably like bucking the system, bucking the ordinary way of doing things, bucking the conventions, doing things in a very, very different way. I'm going to have some transits for him in a minute, but just notice that Pluto has been moving across his
So,
Saturn. So there's something about his relationship to authority that's been undergoing a transformation in the last year plus.
and you
With
don't need astrology to see that he's charismatic, but having a sun in Libra in the third house, along with Mars and Mercury, that's all very charismatic energy. And also, Leo rising, it could be a Cancer rising since it's zero Leo. Like we're not entirely sure, but this is the time that was given to us. And so, Leo rising is very charismatic. And actually, in some ways, so is Aquarian energy because people are attracted to something very different right now. Aquarian energy is not always attractive to people, like in a charisma sort of way, but right now, 100%, because people are looking for change, they're looking for revolution, they're looking for new ideas, and that's an Aquarian moon.
and it's in a wide, I mean, it's really wide, but he's in a wide trine between his sun and his moon. So I don't see a huge internal conflict inside of him. I think his conflict is more with the structures that he's living within, be my guess.
Yeah.
Anything more on his specific birth chart before I put up the transits for when Cuomo conceded?
I would just say like probably one of the things that he's going to struggle with is that South Node,
Hmm.
really being leading with heart, leading with compassion, and maybe not always seeing um, as clearly about the structures of what's realistic. That could be that he's going to have to work within structures and bring that energy into a place of service that could be more hierarchical than he wants it to be. So that would be the only last piece that I would want to toss
Okay,
in.
so I have, oh, and it's got a misspelling in it. That's great. All right, just assume that that says
Oh
concession.
my God, I've got misspellings always in everything. And so,
I never see them till they're on the screen. So this is about when Cuomo's concession was reported, and it's not quibble with the time. The big pieces are pretty much in place of what happened then, and though
mhm.
so we've already mentioned that Pluto's been going back and forth across the Saturn. Pluto is retrograde. It's only going to go back to one, but that's going to be kind of close. And it's squaring, it's exactly squaring his Mercury, his communication planet.
Those are
And,
going to be all the people coming after him. Those are all the people who are going to be, calling him names and radical communist, and that's a lot of that. Like he's going to have to stay strong. Like that's what he's being called to do, is to stand up in the face of some pretty heavy opposition to see what he's worth, what he's made of.
more of that is going to come early in July as Mars in Virgo moves across his Jupiter and his Venus. He is going to get nitpicked. Nitpicked. That's my guess with that.
I think the fact that he has Saturn angularly helps. Natally, it's on the angle there. So it's kind of like he's used to this. It's like now it's sort of like, here's the big test, guy,
Hmm.
can you withstand it?
Hmm. That makes sense. So what is Jupiter early in Cancer is going to be, so Jupiter is exactly, oh, look, Jupiter is exactly trining his Mercury. So his messaging went well, but who knows what's brewing behind the scenes? Does this mean he has support, or is this some protective influence? Because I understand there was massive regrouping, like, uh-oh, now what do we do? Um,
Jupiter in Cancer is going to be supportive of him because it's going to this whole year by whole sign be like in that 12th house. Um, I don't know when I don't know the date of the election, but
uh,
do you have any idea?
it's
The
early,
general.
it's in November, the first Tuesday in November, but you know what? I really don't want to even guess what's going to happen with the election.
Right, so many things can change
I
between
know,
now
but
and
before then, just to see, Jupiter is going to sextile his Jupiter and Venus. So as it moves throughout the summer, it's going to open doors to, I don't know what that will be. People who are very useful, people who are very helpful, but in there's something going on. I actually wrote notes. Um, so currently it's been trining his Mars and Mercury, then it's going to make an opportunity aspect, open windows, open doors to that uh, service-oriented, let's get down to details. This isn't someone who just talks big stuff. He has plans, he has ideas of how to
Mhm.
do it with that Jupiter and that Cancer. And as the summer goes on, Uranus, once it gets so in on July 7th, as we mentioned, Uranus is going to move to zero
Gemini.
Gemini, and it's going to exactly trine his seventh house cusp, his doorway to his house of allies and open enemies, and it's also going to trine that Saturn. So, and that's going to happen roughly when Mars is moving across his Jupiter and his Venus. So is that a recipe for that's when the big guns really start coming at him? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's with Pluto sitting there and Venus. That Pluto's not going away. So this is a very, very fated time of his life with big outer planet activity. Uh, and it's going to be intense. He's got Saturn in the eighth, which in a lot of ways that tells me the coffers are going to be opened up for him. He's going to get donations pouring in. So I think that's a positive thing. I think no matter what, he's going to be incredibly influential. They called it an earthquake when he won, right? And it's just a primary for a mayoral contest, election. So we have to sort of look at this. If we sort of zoom out, I see that it's he's just another one of the pieces of like this big puzzle of like new things falling into place.
And Saturn is in a, so Saturn and Neptune are in this opportunity aspect to his own Saturn. So there could be offers of help. There could be
Mhm.
people who consider him an inspirational leader and want to do things to help him out.
It's very powerful. I think there's some very optimistic things here. I think no matter what, we have to kind of recognize that this did send a huge message to the establishment, that the establishment is not listening. Like I just read a story the other day about how Schumer wrote a letter to Kristi Noem, and I was just like, oh my God,
No,
that's
that's not
like
what you do. You don't just write her a letter.
right. Like, I mean, it's like, what are you doing? Like, we're not writing letters anymore. Like, so, the fact that the establishment out of Albany ran Cuomo again after he had credibly been accused of some pretty, nasty sexual harassment. So we have to kind of see like this was a message. Now, New York City is not, um, rural Michigan, But I think Dems need to understand that change is in the air, change is warranted, action. And this is an action oriented chart. And his transits are very electric right now as well. So, so I
He'll
think
be in
that
the news.
if there's a lesson to learn, it's like not one size doesn't fit all. You're not going to have this guy winning an election in rural Michigan. However, somebody who represents something other than the status quo that is coming with fresh ideas, that is authentic and that cares about people, genuinely cares about people, not just says they care about people, is going to be very powerful right now with everything that I see in the sky in general.
So is there anything more you'd like to say about him, or can we move to July 4th?
No, I think I've yacked enough.
Oh, no, no, it's all, I appreciate it. It's wonderful. All right. So I have mentioned, can we have it, please? No, please. May I have it?
You can have it. Just takes a minute.
It's, let me move the chart. There we go. So Venus and Uranus are going to be
Here it is.
conjunct. And my software will not put fixed stars. I even talked to them into a regular chart. So Algol, the fixed chart, a star that represents the head, Medusa, all kinds of things, is close to the conjunction, but the exactness is between Venus and Uranus. Early in the morning of the 4th, I set this for Washington. It's in the most public part of the chart. The 10th house could be the leader, could be other things. Um,
Well, and to remind people, Joe Biden dropped out when Algol was in a prominent position in the chart. So, oftentimes it's not always what we think it's going to be. Also, that was the attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania as well. There,
Mars
Algol was
was
playing a
Mars
role.
was square Uranus and Algol when that
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. So this is a different, but you almost can see like what I was saying before about the big beautiful bill, the big ugly bill, and having Algol there. It's almost like you may get what you want, but is it what is it going to be your undoing?
Because the moon, which represents the people, is square, which will become exact as the day goes on. Um, Pluto in the sign of the collective. Interestingly, Pluto rules this because Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. That is motivating to the masses, seems to me.
Yeah.
And the moon is in an adjustment aspect to that Jupiter, I'm sorry, Saturn, Neptune up there in the eighth house of taxes and other people's money. So there will be something that will be definitely in the air having to do with the budget
Yeah.
by
I think
that
there's a
morning.
lot of so I think there's a lot of volatility with that Uranus in 29. I think there's a lot of things that are unexpected. So I guess, unexpected consequences is what is coming to me over and over again when I think about this. Like it's kind of like Liberation Day, how that was received with all the pomp and circumstance of like, isn't this going to be so great? I think there's a similar sort of like it could have dramatic impacts on our economy that we're and it could be pretty immediate.
That would fit. Uh, Also, it's worth noting that when there's a really powerful aspect, often the event that plays it out happens as it's building. So this is exact the morning of the 4th in Washington. It could be that something happens the day of the 3rd that plays it out.
On a positive note, ish,
Please.
ish, Jupiter and the sun are still pretty close together. And, you see these kind of warring factions within the movement around what's been happening with Iran, what's been, the big ugly bill, the tariffs, like even immigration. There is something potentially about a reunification of values with that Cancer and Jupiter energy. So, like I said, as Jupiter moves away from the square with Aries, there may be more of a coming back together as a nation when Jupiter goes over all the personal planets in the US Sibley chart. That's my hopeful silver lining.
I wouldn't argue with that. There's also the possibility here, since of this having immediate consequences on certain individuals. And I have put two charts together that are going to be really hit by this. Actually, we're going to look at three people who are going to be really hit by this. So,
So
Trump,
good. You have like so much work you put into this. I'm
thank
grateful. I
you.
watch this when it's you and Louise. So I just have to say thank you for all your work, Kathy.
Thank you. So what we have here is Trump in the middle. I'm sorry, Trump's the very center. Vance is on in the center ring, and then the day of the conjunction, July 4th, up here at the top. And what immediately struck me was
Hmm.
so Trump had, if his time is correct, there's some indication it might not be, but we'll just go with it because I think it has energy because enough people have looked at this for years. This this Venus Uranus Algol conjunction is squaring, which is forced action, Trump's ascendant and Mars, and Vance's ascendant and Venus. And in the case of Vance, we'll just take that piece right there, just those two things. All right, so there's something. Does this mean that they are hitting the ejector button on something, or that something happens that radically and unexpectedly changes their public persona?
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
And let's add to the picture, as far as Vance is concerned, he has in his chart, just looking at him, he has Venus and Mars squared. So he has Venus conjunct his ascendant, squared Mars, which I think indicates, since they're in Leo and Scorpio, big sexual issues. This is talking about cat ladies and whatever the business with that eyeliner is. And I know a lot of men who wear makeup, okay? I do not have a problem with men wearing makeup. I have a problem with hypocrites wearing makeup. Um, so this is creating a T-square in his chart, meaning that he's getting equal pressure. It's kind of wide, but it's enough that I'm going to count it. He's getting equal pressure from the conjunction of Venus and Uranus and Algol and from Mars in Scorpio, and they're both pushing on his ascendant, his public face, and his Venus. Um, if he has any public appearances that day, I don't think they're going to be pleasant for him. But there's something else. I don't know. If this were a private person coming to me, I'd say your relationship is in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, what as an evolutionary astrologer, I see like that Uranus is coming up on his nodes, and Uranus on your nodes is like you have to make a change. You can't keep doing things the way you're used to doing them. You have, and it's going to be a public,
Very public.
right? There's going to be something that shakes his foundation publicly. I'm not a predictive astrologer, so I tend to shy away from giving big predictions. I was talking about the big ugly bill being one thing. Like there could be, we've read in the news that there could be, a crashing of the dollar or things like that. But it also could be something like the earth, like there could be like a climate event with that 29 degrees. Like there could be an earthquake, there could be, I don't know. I don't know what other, just like something very sudden that has to do with the earth that then becomes something that, he has to, that's part of his lessons to deal with, as a leader, like the fallout of that. Like, are you going to be responsible? Like, do you have what it takes? You know?
And that 29-degree conjunction is in an inconjunct. I drew the little seesaw, or an adjustment aspect with his Pluto in the third. His Pluto in Libra in the third would suggest to me that he has some pretty big alliances somewhere. And I don't know if this is a disclosure coming out, something that's stressing, where he's going to be forced to make a choice between this or that. And I'll just point out that while this is happening, Mercury is heading towards his sun in the 10th house and Trump's Pluto in the 10th house. And Mercury is going to be going retrograde. So whatever is going on now, Mercury is going to go back over this part of their charts later. Um, and if there is any information that is coming about things that happened in early November or in early January, there, or maybe even just completely apart from that, Mercury going across that Sun and that Pluto in the 10th house, which is a house of behind the scenes, backroom things. Some stuff could be coming out about things they were involved in, maybe some deals that were made. This is, I'll just say for entertainment purposes, only the House of Criminality. So who knows what else? I would just watch. Something in the news is going to it's not going to just be July 4th, we're watching fireworks and eating hot dogs kind of day. There will be big things playing out.
Mhm. Yeah.
So anything else? Hold on. Something going on with Vance's Neptune. Where is his Neptune? Oh, also, well, isn't this interesting? What do you make of this? His Neptune is at 29 Sagittarius. So these two, Pluto and Neptune, are in a sextile, and they're both in conjunct that Venus-Uranus uh, conjunction, which is what's called a finger of God or a yod. I had not seen that. So something is going on now that is really important and forcing information out. Neptune in the fourth in Sagittarius, he's kind of reinvented himself a bunch of times. Um, a lot of times, actually. Um, I don't know what this could. This there will be something big and major and maybe involving. Could involve money because Pluto and Venus are both part of it, and the sign of Taurus is there. Could involve a woman. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's interesting with the Neptune in Sagittarius at the final degree in his fourth house, which would sort of indicate this confusion around ideas
Mm-hmm.
because it's very malleable. His ideas, like that's where that's because I was always kind of wondering like what the chameleon piece is of
Maybe
him.
that's it.
And that could play into it. Obviously, the 12th house sun can play a role too of being like hidden from himself, who he really is. You can listen to him and he can sound incredibly rational and intelligent, or you can listen and you can listen to him at other times and he can sound just moronic and
Mm-hmm.
like I perceive him to be cruel. So it's this interesting juxtaposition of like what's real and what isn't real. And I can't help but think in the coming year with Uranus activating his nodes, there's in such a public way, there's almost like an outing of who the real person is in order for him to then like for his greater good,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, so, or at least there's some challenge that is going to expose him. That's what I would make of it, I guess.
And this moment in time could be a big piece of it. It's
Mhm.
a pivotal piece of it. So,
Right, because that, I mean, that's a conjunction. I mean, that's 3 degrees off. That's, he's feeling that. It's all in the realm and it's all in his 10th house. So it's
mhm.
out there. So yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I wish that astrology, sometimes I wish that it was more of an exact science because I would love to be able to predict the future, but I can tell you the energy that he's going to be under is much more of one where people will be scrutinizing his actions and his words.
So, as soon as Uranus actually moves over, he'll be feeling it already, but as soon as it moves over into Gemini, it will be in uh, a um, a sextile or an opportunity aspect, opening a door, opening a window to Saturn, Neptune in his eighth house, which is other people's money. It's also another place of like what you've invested in or behind the scenes in a sense, and it's also treated as another house of criminality. So I don't know. There could be more. Could be something very suddenly, information very suddenly coming out. Um, I can't imagine that countries in Europe are particularly happy with him for some of the things he's been saying.
No, I mean, his mouth has been getting him into a lot of trouble. But again, I don't know what he really believes. And that's the interesting thing is I think that when Dummy speaks, he believes everything that he's saying in that moment. Like, I think that, and that's very relatable to people. I do not get the sense when Vance speaks that there is an authentic conviction behind it that's like connecting with other people. And there has to be some part of him that is going to have to recognize to be a leader, he's going to have to understand the relativity and complexity of different situations. And right now, he is just doing that for his own personal gain, from what I can tell.
Well, this shift of when Uranus go, I think this lineup of things that are starting to get teed up on the fourth speaks to what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so we may see a new version of him um, emerge. So I guess that's kind of like part of that chameleon is like if there is no um, I don't know what I stand for or who I am, or I'm willing to be what you want me to be. That's, I guess, more of what it is. And to get ahead,
And
there,
and
there
here's a
might
possible.
be,
I'm sorry.
there just might be, a new version that emerges of him as he needs to get ahead. Like, you know what I
One way
mean?
that could play out is, and people are going to go, "Oh God, no!" But it would not be impossible under this lineup for someone to be taken out of a position and someone to be put into the position with the help of some very powerful people.
Yeah, that activation, there's a change coming. There's a
Mm.
change in his professional status. That would be what I would say. There's something changing about his career, and it is part of his destiny, and he's going to have some choices to make. It's going to be a big choice point, and what emerges may not be what we see right now. That's all I could say.
I would agree. There's one other person that I saw immediately who is going to be hit by this. No, go back. And that's the director of national intelligence who has been iced out of any discussion of what's been going on in Iran because her intelligence assessments was that Iran didn't have nuclear threat going on, and that was inconvenient. So someone wanted to rewrite her report with a Sharpie. So the reason I put her up is that Venus-Uranus conjunction could be the ejection of a woman, and lo and behold, now this is a solar chart. We don't have a time, but
Mhm.
it's exactly opposing her Uranus.
Hmm.
Now, a Uranus opposition is a point in anybody's life when it used to be, it was called a midlife crisis. It used to be that's when you would like have an affair, drive a red Cadillac. I threw my life over, moved halfway across the country. People do things that upend stuff. And this is going across her solar axis of how she earns her living. So I'm not saying it's a given that this is what will happen, but she could be ejected from her position as a way of taking, well, just as a result of things that are going on. Like they need a subterfuge. Oh, look, we'll just boot her out. Bam. I'm not going to be surprised if that's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't studied this chart much. So, and but I do, yeah, that definitely could fit. And we are definitely seeing her being sidelined.
Yep. Um, and with the moon in her solar seventh, squaring Pluto in her solar career house, there could be those who want to do her in, who say one thing to her face and do something. So she could be what's ejected out of this, very much so.
Yeah, there's a lot of dynamic energy in the sky right now, as we've all seen through your 2 pages of notes.
Right, right. So, but I mean, the first thing I thought when I saw Venus and Uranus together, I thought, what woman is going to get axed with Algol being there? And I put up Kristi Noem's chart. It's not active in her chart. I put up this chart and went, oh, this is active. She could go. She could, or something that ends up.
And she made like a weird kind of almost like propaganda video for the Russians about nuclear war that apparently was not other people didn't know it was coming. So
Oh,
that also made the administration angry because they didn't tell her to do that. Who told you to do that?
huh. Well, that's going along with a certain thing that has been said about her. She was on a TSA watch list for the longest time. That's, you don't get on a TSA watch list unless you have somehow caused alarm in a part of the government somewhere. So,
Yeah, very fiery chart for sure. South
mhm.
Node in Aquarius. Uh, yeah.
Yep.
I think my guess is she actually believes she is doing what's right for the people, but she's doing it in a rogue manner. Like if I had to guess her psychology, and that's what I'm doing by looking at the chart. Um,
Well, that would fit someone who starts out in one party and goes to another party.
right.
So, yeah.
Right. Like an
Anything
end
else? Yeah.
justifies the means, like an ends justifies the means sort of uh, aspects. I see. So
Mhm.
no, I don't have anything else. I think we've covered a lot though.
I do too. All right. So, thank you very much. This has been fun.
It has been fun. Thank you so much for hosting me. I appreciate it.
Will you tell people where they can find you?
Absolutely. I'm at Lawless Astrology on YouTube. And also, you can go to just lawlessastrology.com is my website. And yeah, it's fun to be here with you, Kathy.
This was great. I really appreciate it. And guys, I'm at empowermentunlimited.net, and I currently have a nearly 1 hour talk about what has happened throughout history when Saturn has been in Aries, when Neptune has been in Aries, and when Saturn and Neptune have been conjunct. Spoilers, habeas corpus, due process, through line, immigration, racism, slavery, through line, Russia, big through line. Epstein even figures into it. So if you want to, it's not so much astrology as it is here is the what's going on with the cycles, and it's a mere $20 and you can get it at my site. So that's what I have. Everyone strap in, do something really nice for yourself this weekend. Remember that Jupiter is in Cancer. If you find yourself Craving ice cream or a bottle of wine? Why, no one will judge you. In fact, I have declared this a Ben and Jerry's summer, so you have my permission.
I'm in. All right. Maybe some Chunky Monkey, Cherry Garcia. Those are the old school ones, but I still like them.
Cherry Garcia is my favorite. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one.